Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Yellow Squared podcast. It's myself, Ned, joined with my brother James. Good evening, James. How are you?
Hello, everybody. Yeah, I'm really good, mate. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad. Apart from Watford, but we'll get onto that. We'll get onto that. So, the past week has been a bit of an interesting one for Watford in terms of on the pitch related action. So we've had two games. We sort of predicted. To be fair, we did actually do a really good job of predicting how the Cardiff game would go. Um, so
Yeah.
we'll start off. We'll start off with that. Obviously, a 3-1 loss at home at any point is pretty poor. But the manner that we lost that game was sort of a really deflating one for me personally. I don't know how you thought that game went, James. Obviously, you were in the ground, so you could experience some of the atmosphere. So, why don't you talk us through what it was like?
Yeah, well, I think I'll start by saying after about 15 minutes of the game, I was feeling pretty smug. Because we spoke at the back end of our last pod saying that, they'd make one change, Konya would come in for Bakuna, and we'd go and win 2-0.
Yeah,
And I was sat there after about 10 minutes, 1-0 up, and Cardiff, I don't think had kicked the ball yet.
yeah,
And things were looking pretty good. I would comment. I was sat with my good friend Nick in the rookery, and we were laughing because it felt a little bit like being sat at a test match at the cricket. It was very much a kind of an atmosphere of that Watford would have to put in a seriously impressive and entertaining performance to really kind of galvanise the 17,000 or so people in the ground.
yeah,
And you can't see me, but I'm sort of smiling to myself saying 17,000 because it was very clearly
yeah,
maybe 3,000 or 4,000 less. Like it was probably about 11,000 or somewhere in there. So we're becoming a bit Arsenal-y with our attendances.
yeah,
For those that remember back in the day. But yeah, things started okay. It was pretty sedate, and then oh my goodness, did we just collapse?
mm.
It was horrible to watch in the ground. And as soon as they equalised, which was a goal kind of out of nothing really,
Yeah, yeah,
notwithstanding the guy from the angle that he for the Cardiff player who had his shot with his right foot to find the bottom, to sort of find the far left corner from the angle he was shooting at, defied belief. But Cardiff couldn't believe that they'd equalised, and I remember just saying in the ground, "This is it. We'll go on to concede another," and yeah, sure enough, we did, and it was just horrible. It was a disgracefully poor performance and attitude shown by pretty much everybody
yeah.
on the pitch. You don't condone the guy that went on the pitch and had a go at the
No,
players.
no.
You can't condone it across the board really, because you don't know what someone's going to do when they come on the pitch.
Mm.
But it did draw quite a strong round of applause from
Yeah,
everybody, simply because it was. I think if I'm being honest, it was one of the most Watfordy pitch invasions I've ever seen. The chap came on, he berated Backman and wanted to dig out Hoot as well. I think said his piece and turned around to walk off before any stewards had even got to him. So that was quite entertaining, but it really did sum up exactly how everybody in the ground thought.
mm.
Half time, the booing was pretty pretty loud and aggressive
Yeah,
towards the players, because and to be honest, quite rightly so, because they just completely capitulated, and there was absolutely zero fight from them in the second half to go back and
yeah,
get into the game. It was and I think what was stark is that I've actually watching home games this season for the few I've been able to get to. I've actually had a really good run of it. I've seen us win quite a lot of games when I've been to the ground. So this was kind of my first exposure to a truly abysmal performance, and it was numbing to watch in the ground, especially the second half, because I was furious with kind of attitude that I saw from the players on the pitch. More from the fact that it felt like towards the end it was a little bit of a they were putting on a bit of a show, pretending to care and put their bodies about a bit, but you just knew that there was nothing. And the dudes over at the Watford Way pod, they nailed it. In their post-match review, and it speaks not just for the Cardiff game, but for everything that we've seen so far this season. What on earth is this side now? There's no identity. There's no culture there. There's nothing. It's just individuals with bad attitudes, and the on-field attitude is symptomatic, I believe, of stuff going on behind the scenes. So I don't want to labour too much on the Cardiff game, because it's been dissected by countless people now. And no one will go and talk about the goal we scored, which was actually, ironically, a really well worked goal to go 1-0 up. Really nice football, but as far as I'm concerned, I didn't even I was away this weekend, so I could only follow the game via my phone, but I wasn't interested in trying to follow it really. To be honest, I think my interest in following Watford on a Saturday now in towards the end of the season is at an all-time low. I will follow it because I want to see what's going on, and I want to talk with you about it. But they're unfixable in their current state. I don't believe there's anything that this squad can do to win us back, and it really does require a complete restart and reset top to bottom. But, we've spoken about that, and we're going to have a look at that in the close season, I think. But it was horrible. It wasn't nice to watch, and I think what epitomised where the club is at the moment is it was extremely noticeable for the 6,000 or 7,000 people left in the ground, I suppose, by the end of the game. As the full-time whistle went, it was noticeable how loud and how quickly the PA system came to cover up the booing, and that just speaks to something really deeply worrying behind the scenes. Are they genuinely trying to prevent the Watford family and the Watford supporters base from expressing how they're feeling? Because it can't be to protect the players. It would be purely to stop the ownership from hearing what they don't want to hear. I've been to a lot of football, and I've been to a lot of football at Vicarage Road, and the PA system never comes on that loud and that quickly at full time. And that, to me, was a horrible sign of what is going on at the club. And I think I'll leave it there. I think I've sat on the fence long enough.
Well, I had the misfortune of paying £10 and watching it at home. But it was sort of I had sort of the same kind of feeling throughout the game. Obviously, we scored a great goal, and then we just sort of begin to coast a little bit. And I saw this Coventry away when we were 2-0 up. The players were just sort of knocking the ball around easily, nicely, and then it just seems like they kind of there's a really like sort of defining moment where the ball will go out of play and then the attitude just completely switches. And we saw it at Coventry, where they were flicking the ball around, and it was really nice football, and then the ball goes out of play for a Coventry goal kick. Then all of a sudden they go up the other end and score. So I don't know whether they're like the players just think, oh, this is really easy. We don't have to try anymore, and then they cannot recover it after the other team scores. But it just felt like that happened again at Cardiff. We were battering them. We played some nice football in the early exchanges. Scored a really good goal. The ball goes out of play after we sort of passed the ball around, had a few waves of attack. Then Cardiff go up the other end and score. The mentality has gone out the window, and probably I wasn't there, but I could imagine the loudest cheer of the ground was of the night was when that fellow walked onto the pitch and then walked back off. So
yeah, it's the most united the fan base has been since Christmas.
Yeah,
but no, I really take your point there, and I actually always think back to it wasn't Watford, but it was West Ham. I always think back to when we beat West Ham 4-2 at the London Stadium.
Yeah.
Because I always remember Troy Deeney coming out after the game and saying, who was it? I can't remember the name of the West Ham player. He did a Rabona cross.
It was Pyatt.
Yeah, Dimitri Payet. Yeah, he did that. He did that Rabona cross for the second goal, and I'm sure Deeney, Deeney turned around, didn't they, and said that they noticed that and they thought, that they were taking the mick.
Yeah,
is probably to put it in PG terms. West Ham were, and it galvanised Watford. And I genuinely think that when we get into these sort of positions of relative comfort, we do just start to knock the ball about and just become super arrogant. And I think it drives. We both take our foot off the throttle, and we over relax. But I also think it winds up the opposition.
Yeah,
and they want to come back into it. We never put our foot on their throats. So that's what it always reminds me of. When we're knocking it about, because I spoke about it. We were in relative control. I wouldn't say we were battering Cardiff, but we were in total control of the game at 1-0, and Cardiff. We were, people around me. We were all commenting on how the goalkeeper for Cardiff had the most touches of anyone in the team at one point, because he was just. Every time he was getting the ball, he was just kicking it long, and we were just mopping it up.
Yeah, it was.
I think it says so much about the the mentality in the squad as a whole.
Yeah, the attitude just seems to be
completely rotten.
So bad, and I don't really know how. Well, we sort of spoke about how that kind of leader would be able to sort of fix that mentality, but we don't have the leader on the pitch, and I don't know whether that leader that the club thinks we have in Cleverley will be around next season or not. I've got no idea. So unless someone comes in, then who knows what's going to happen? Who knows? But yeah, it was a pretty dire night for Watford, and I agree that the sort of PA system situation does seem really worrying when you pair that with the fact that Watford are almost in breach of speaking to the fans, and it just seems like the positives are hiding away from any kind of uprising, so to speak, because they've had it at their other clubs. Udinese, their fans went to protest outside of their training ground when they felt that their club was being run poorly, and now look, and Udinese are quite obviously the favourite child right now of the Pozzo family. So it does just seem like they're trying to hide away from the issues and hide away from what Watford fans really think, because it's not all sunshine and rainbows at Vicarage Road, which a lot of neutral football fans would like to think. But yeah, a night to forget, and then we can move on to a day to forget at Hull. And I wanted to start this by saying that I've got massive plaudits for all those Watford fans that made the trip to Hull, because I've got no idea what they were expecting to happen there. I thought we'd lose when I woke up that morning. So I don't know why. I don't know why certain Watford fans do it to themselves, but it's
yeah. I mean, I think it's because as it should be in some respects, it should be not about the result.
yeah.
It should be about going,
I suppose so. Yeah.
meeting up with friends, and just having a day out. Just having a laugh and a joke, and getting to watch some football.
Yeah, I mean, I was more on about how I can't see anyone wanting to have a day out in Hull, but the point's valid. Yeah.
Hey, yeah, you've already started a war with the Hull City fan base, man. I'd be real careful.
Yeah, I've got to watch my words. Those Turkish Twitter accounts will be after me. But yeah, it was a real strange game of football. We together went to watch Hull Watford back in December, and that was quite possibly the worst game of football I think I've ever been involved in. And,
worst and coldest.
It was absolutely freezing, which made it a bit worse. So, but yeah, it did just feel like there was not a lot of football going on Saturday. We had a couple nice bits of play in the first half, where I thought, wow, we could probably get something out of this. Hull were just sort of passing the ball around the back. I think the goalkeeper had a lot more touches than anyone else in on the field for Hull in the first half, because they were just sort of doing this sort of slow build up thing, but it wasn't really going anywhere. So it was a real strange game of football. The penalty, it was a penalty. It was a bit unlucky for Andrews. He's obviously slid in to sort of block a shot, and the guy sort of cut back and fell onto him. So it was always going to get given, but yeah, it just I never felt like we'd ever come back from 1-0 down, and I don't think at any point, if we go behind, that we'd ever get points with this team. It really just feels like we need to score first and then score 7 goals so the team can't score any more than us, which is really is really concerning.
It's damning, isn't it?
Yeah, but I know you didn't watch the game on Saturday, but you really didn't miss anything. It was just sort of that classic. We'll look like we want to sort of try. Sarr was really unlucky not to score. It was actually a good save in the second half that prevented him from sort of lobbing the ball over the keeper. But really, I didn't think either team. I think if it had been a draw, then it would be more fitting for both teams to get 0 points than to get anything out of that game, because it was really just a terrible game of football, and it was not one of the better spent afternoons I've had this season watching Watford. So yeah, sort of a really nothing game, and I turned it off after Ken Sema had a shot from about 300 miles away, and it went into outer space in the sort of 90 plus 2 minutes. So it was a real strange game of football, and we were just terrible in the second half. And I do have to say, I feel bad for Asprilla, because it does seem like he just sort of gets thrown into a game that we're chasing, and never really gets the opportunity to sort of go at a team while we're 0-0, which is a bit of a shame, because he could change the game. But yeah, I did want to say that a lot of Watford fans have been commenting on this sort of João Pedro. Whenever the game finishes, he just walks straight down the tunnel, and I think it kind of sums up the attitude and mentality of the players themselves, because this guy is the captain on the field anyway. It just doesn't feel like that's setting a great example for the team that he's supposed to lead, and it's impressive that the players that seem to get the most stick, like Kabasele and Kamara and Sarr, whilst they do drop some really poor performances, they are the ones that continue to go over and thank the fans for travelling. I think think people said that it was only sort of Kamara and Cabaseda that went over after the end of the whole game, and I think that was a performance that should have warranted Wilder sort of rounding up all the players and anyone who travelled and gone to thank the fans, because really they did turn in a real 0 out of 10 and gave Watford nothing, gave the fans nothing to get excited about. So it is disappointing that João Pedro is sort of goes down the tunnel straight away after the game, but yeah. It just seems like a weird one. It just feel a bit like he's mentally checked out as well, which is a bit of a shame. But obviously he's destined to move on, and he probably can't wait to leave.
I think it's right for him.
Because
You don't necessarily know. I agree. It's not a good look. And he might, and hopefully will look back on the last sort of 3 or 4 months of his time at Watford and think, I probably could have handled myself slightly differently then.
Yeah.
So but it's a tough one because he's young and he's probably just frustrated and angry with the situation and handling it in a slightly different manner.
But there you go. That's that situation we've been coming back to a lot with that leader on the pitch. You'd have somebody to take those young players under their wing and say, look, we know it was a frustrating afternoon. We know that we couldn't do what we needed to do, but you still have to go and say thank you to the fans that have spent their money and bought tickets for trains and coaches that may have got cancelled due to the strikes and whatever, and they've still managed to get to the ground to follow them. So it does feel a bit like we're lacking that leader to all over. It does feel like we need somebody to sort of drag this team through the mud. But I honestly can't think of anyone that could come in and do that job. I don't know what kind of characters there are in football that would be able to help.
Well, I mean, we've touched on this already, haven't we? And I know some of the other, Watford content creators out there have touched on it. Yeah. I don't think this is a one-person fix. I don't think there's a magical player out there that you bring in.
No.
No, I know, but I genuinely don't think it's just a one player fix. Because I think it all comes down to the team. And if the team has the right mindset, then I think you get that togetherness.
Yeah.
Because frankly, sort of looking at it objectively, if I was in the Hull away end on Saturday, and none of them came over to say thank you, or they all came over and sort of said thank you, I don't know if I believe any of it is sincere.
No,
because they've not shown that they care. They've not shown that they've wanted to fight for it since probably the Burnley game that we drew 1-1. Sort of, they've not shown any sort of will to go and dig out for the team and for the club. So, frankly, the fact that they didn't come over or they don't come over with this side, I'm not bothered. And the fact that a couple of them came over, that's great. But in the grand scheme of things, do they actually care? Do they actually mean it, or are they doing it out of a sense of obligation?
No,
we'll never know the answer to that.
No, I understand. Yeah, I get the point. It's really interesting. I think, like you said, this is not a one person fix. The actual club itself is really in a bad place right now, and I could probably name you about 3 players that should be at the club next season. I think it could be an entirely new dressing room and a very, very busy window in terms of ins and outs. But hopefully we can get some good money for JP and Sarr and maybe Lauser and some other players that could potentially go for a nice fee, and then we just rebuild. But that is very wishful thinking with Watford. So it'll all come to fruition at the start of next season. but I just hope we can get there as soon as possible because I'm very tired of this season and this Watford team. So that is the miserable stuff out of the way.
Yeah.
I've got a couple more points in the sort of pod notes for this pod because we're a bit of a loss for what to talk about really, because I think I speak for many Watford fans when I say we just all feel a bit deflated and a bit sort of we've got a bit of lack of enthusiasm about Watford right now. So it did feel a bit like there's not really much to talk about, but there was one interesting thing, and I'll let you talk about it, James, because I know you've done some research into it. But the Ben Manga interviews, I believe, with Andrew French,
that's the one
this week. So I'll let you speak about that.
Oh yeah, I mean, I thought you had a wonderful opportunity to come up with a fantastic segue, talking about how the whole playing side needs a complete change and stripping people out from the squad, and we're going to go straight into talking about Ben Manga, the man who has supposedly been given responsibility for all football operations. So yeah, I mean, I've been flicking through the Watford Observer brilliant articles, as has been probably one of the highlights of sort of following Watford and all things Watford this season is just the sheer volume of content and reporting, and high quality reporting as well that's come out from Andrew French. So shout out to him. Yeah. But Ben Manga, a series of exclusive interviews that have been done for the club, and sort of kind of the broad themes that have come out from him is that it really, to me, it looks like on the face of it, and I say that on the face of it because I think that is key, but I'm not going to get dragged down into that discussion. On the face of it, it looks like Watford have brought Ben Manga in and have said, right, okay, footballing operations, everything football is your bag, and we're going to back you. He's been allowed to bring his key staff in, so you've got the scout Helena Costa and his technical director Tonello. They've all been brought in from Frankfurt. He's going to have the responsibility for the signing and selling of players, but also kind of the right fit, the right mental, mentally the right players that they want for Watford. He came out with the quote to say he doesn't want players that are here physically, but the heads are somewhere else.
Yeah.
So he really looks like he wants to build a squad, and most importantly, what was also said is that he is responsible for the signing of the head coach as well. So it looks like we're going to be shifting to this model, which I'm super excited about.
Yeah,
it's the one thing we can all get behind is moving to a model where the club has a style of play, and they cherry pick and they find players and staff to work around that style of play. And there's some other good quotes. I hear the cries of hallelujah, where he said he's under no pressure to work with any specific agent. So hopefully that's Moji Bayat in the bin. He did also come out talking about wanting manager stability, and he wants Gino Pozzo to trust him. And I think that's a brave thing to say. I would suggest a couple of months into being at Watford to sort of call out the owner, as we know. But I think what Manga brings with him is actually a pretty strong CV.
Yeah.
With a proven track record.
Yeah.
Yes, it was in Germany. But if you look at Germany, you've basically got Dortmund and Bayern who are challenging at the top, but everybody else is kind of fair game, and he's done it with Frankfurt, but he's been at Düsseldorf, a number of other teams, and he's transformed them whilst being there. And it looks like he's decided to come to Watford because he wants to have more control. He wasn't the big dog in the seat in terms of sort of the footballing operations side at those clubs, but he was heavily involved, and he's come to Watford to really prove himself. And when we spoke in the previous pods about what kind of players that we would like to sign in the future, sort of those younger, hungrier players who want to come to the Championship to demonstrate that they're ready for the next step, and I would put someone like Ryan Porteous in that category. We're actually signing we signed an individual here who wants to come to Watford to prove himself. So I think that's massive. So for me, on the face of it, looking at everything that he's come out and said, he seems to be the person that has been the voice of the club for football, from the football side of things. He had to put the statement out about Wilder not leaving. He was responsible for the statement about Bilic being sacked. So he looks like he is now the voice of football operations writ large, and it would to me suggest that there is a degree of control or a degree of autonomy that has been put in place to Ben Manga to be able to make a few of his own decisions on behalf of Gino Pozzo and Scott Duxbury. So that was kind of my sort of take on the articles. Fascinating reads, really interesting stuff in there. But sort of like a quick take, and I think that's massive. I think for the club, if they are going to get it right under the Pozzo ownership, is this decisive change in how we're going to be doing our business is not only really encouraging, but I think is critical for the future of the club. I think so. So that was my hot take on it, mate. I don't know if you had any kind of other points you want to.
Well, yeah, I thought it was interesting. So the sort of CV that he's built while, especially at Frankfurt. I mean, he took them from, I think they were about 15th in the Bundesliga, and they were sort of flirting with the relegation zone. And he built that relationship with the manager at the time. I can't quite remember his name, but then they sort of worked together and eventually became Europa League champions. And I'm not expecting this to happen overnight for Watford, but having that ability for Ben Manga to pick his head coach, and they work together, and then they bring in the players they want for the system they want, for the style of football they want, could be a really sort of important wholesale change that the club needs to get back on track. And it does sort of make a lot of sense when you think like Bilic was never going to last in a job when it was sort of publicly known that himself and Ben Manga didn't get on, and they sort of had disagreements over what they wanted out of the January transfer window. So if he has that ability to sort of control all of footballing operations, then that is like a real positive in terms of bringing in a new coach, especially a younger coach with a sort of project idea in the workings, because I can't think that anyone would trust Gino Pozzo, especially a younger manager, after how they treated Rob Edwards and obviously their history of sacking managers like there's no tomorrow. So really, really important, positive wholesale changes, and it's a nice way to end off quite a miserable podcast.
Yeah,
in terms of Watford content.
In terms of Watford content, yeah, and I think, sorry, you said you couldn't remember the head coach, that Ben Manga, were. Just doing a quick bit of looking here. So he was at Frankfurt for the tail end of Niko Kovac, so big manager there. But Niko Kovac, the chap that you're talking about that took them to the Europa League and the Champions League, was a chap called Adi Hutter. And then he left with Oliver Glasner in charge. Now, obviously, two of those three, Glasner hasn't left the club yet, but two of those three managers, they weren't sacked. They weren't necessarily sacked. They went on to bigger, better clubs, which is exactly the model that the Pozzos wanted. So, there's an element there that if they can instill that. So I think that's kind of what they want to get to. I think they want to get back to slightly being this stepping stone club that you get hungry, determined managers to come in and players to come in and prove themselves and make themselves onto the next step.
Because ultimately the more hungry players are going to provide the better performances and the more entertaining football for the fans. Because ultimately, like, I'm not expecting to become, Premier League side challenging like, the likes of Brighton or somebody like West Ham or somebody who's gone and they've gone on and started pushing for Europe and something like that. But to sort of play entertaining football, and become a stable Premier League side would be probably the best I could ask for from this Watford club in the modern game, especially with the sort of investment that clubs are putting in when they're being promoted. I mean, you look at Forest and Fulham and even Bournemouth, to be fair to them, this kind of investment that they're putting in when they go to the Premier League is something that Watford would really struggle to keep up with at the moment unless we keep building that model and buying players at low, building them and then selling them on for more. But yeah, I think that's probably about everything I've got for this week. So if you wouldn't mind, James, I'll just run through some news very quickly to round off the pod. So Ismail Assar, his goal against West Brom, an incredible goal in a game where he was really Jekyll and Hyde and then missed a penalty. But an incredible goal to win goal of the season in the Championship. So congratulations to him and commiserations to the Watford women's side who lost 3-2 in the 115th minute to Nottingham Forest women's in the final of the Women's National League Cup. So really unlucky, but it was a great journey to the final for them, and a real sort of beacon that they've been for Watford this season, a real shining light. So it's really unfortunate for them, but they have got a few more games left in their domestic league, so hopefully they can push on for promotion and a lot of the hard work doesn't fully go to waste. So it's been a great season for them, and just really unfortunate to be pipped at the post by quite an exciting Nottingham Forest side. So thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Yellow Squared podcast. Just hang in there, Watford fans. It's been a real tough season for all of us following the club, and hopefully we've got some bigger and better things to look forward to in the coming season. So thank you for listening, and we'll catch you again very soon. Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Thanks now. See you later.